Hello and welcome to the NAC weather page for this Tuesday, March 7th, and the winds are going to be the definite story here over the next 36 hours. We got some wind advisories near the Lake Michigan shoreline, and for much of southwest lower Michigan we have a high wind watch for Wednesday, and I think we'll see those extend at least into many other parts of the state of Michigan. Could end up with just a wind advisory out of this, but we're going to be pushing the envelope here on the winds. We could be seeing wind gusts between 50 and 60 miles per hour later on tomorrow. Again, we'll keep an eye on some of the latest data on that, but at the very least I think we'll see winds of 40 to 50 miles per hour Wednesday, and that would lead to at least scattered power outages. But if the higher winds do prevail, then we could see more in the way of widespread power outages across the state. And we got some showers and even a couple thunderstorms this morning, came in with lots of lightning in the air, and those will move off to the east. We'll see some sunshine. That'll allow mixing of that strong winds about a couple thousand feet off the deck to mix down to the surface, and that could give us some winds of 35, maybe 40 miles an hour, especially as you get closer to Lake Michigan. And then you can see the extended outlook, colder than normal and wetter than normal, so don't put away the snow shovels. The next system looks like that could bring snow. Looks like it's going to now sink quite a bit farther south into the Ohio Valley, so it looks like we'll miss that one for late weekend, early next week. I think we're going to keep an eye on some systems as we get into the middle and end of next week into the following week. And again, we could see some accumulating snows at that time. The pattern is pretty good for producing snow, especially this time of year. If we look at the next shot, it is definitely going to be a windy period coming up, so hang on to your hat or cat, as it may be. And again, if we look at the next slide, our normal highs for the day is 38, the normal low is 20. And you can see 9 inches of snow fell back on this day in 1971. That was also the precipitation record for the date as well. If we look at the next slide, again, you can see the highest and lowest temperatures across the U.S. Yesterday, 95 degrees once again for the second day in a row. The hot spot at Rio Grande Village in Texas, and the cold spot 8 below zero at Berlin, New Hampshire, and at Freiburg, Maine. If we look at the conditions around the MAC area yesterday, you can see temperatures in the mid to upper 50s, so a very warm day. The hot spot Marlette at 58, and the cold spot just a little bit below freezing at St. Thomas. If we look at the next slide, you can see conditions around the MAC area this morning. Temperatures, again, pretty much close to the daytime highs that were reached at midnight into the mid to upper 50s, so a very balmy early March morning out there. These are more indicative of late May morning temperatures. And if we look at the next slide, you can see the strongest wind gusts I've seen so far was at Middleton at 36 miles per hour. And we're going to see some pretty windy conditions around the area tomorrow as that stronger Arctic front pushes through the area. And again, how strong the winds get tomorrow, if we see the cold front come through and we hang on to a lot of clouds, we may not be able to mix down those winds from a couple thousand feet off the deck, which will be around 45 to 55 knots, which would convert over to about 50 to 60 mile an hour winds if that does happen. So we'll keep an eye on that. And if we see sunshine, that's going to be a good indicator we could see some very powerful winds tomorrow. If we look at the next shot, you can see on the weather map this morning the warm front through the area, very warm conditions, and we've got winds right out of the south, very strong out ahead of this cold front. And again, it's behind the second front that's going to be moving through. That's going to give us, I think, our stronger winds for tomorrow. And you can see those winds, and you can see where the front is along this front here. Well, hopefully this will go into motion, perhaps it's not, but right along this line here is where we've got very powerful winds coming up, and we also have those strong thunderstorms. And you can take a look at those on radar. You can see as that cold front moves through the air, some very powerful storms. You look down here in some of these areas, I don't think I have that stop rate, but there's a cell right out ahead of this main line. Anytime you see a thunderstorm out ahead of the main line, those are the ones can be pretty deadly tornadic type systems in this environment. So again, definitely something, if you're in west central and central Arkansas this morning, you probably have had a pretty severe storm move through the area. You can see a number of segments along this line that begin to bowl again, so high winds and downdrafts likely in those areas. And if we look at the satellite, you can see in this area across Arkansas where we were concerned this morning. Of course, anytime you see storms at the points of any of these thunderstorms, you worry about the possibility for tornadoes. I'm going to guess there were probably several tornadoes here early on this Tuesday morning. If we look at the next shot, you can see part of the GO 16R, the lightning sensors on those. This is some of this imagery out that's going to be very, very unique and interesting to see these summertime thunderstorms once they begin to release this to the public here in the coming months. If we look at the weather map this morning, you can see that low pressure system that was out in the Dakotas now moving well up into Canada. And again, the best support for snow is going to move to the northwest with that system. Again, the powerful cold front that'll bring some pretty gusty winds today, and even stronger cold front that'll bring the real cold air and the very strong winds for tomorrow heading towards the Great Lakes. And if you can see on Wednesday morning, that secondary front that'll have the cold air and the very strong winds just now coming into the state during the early morning hours. And once that system moves through, we're going to see winds really begin to howl right out of the west, and our temperatures will fall down into the 30s by later in the day. And as the next system moves along that front that sinks farther south, it'll continue to sink a little farther south, and that's going to take the best chance of snow as we get into the weekend. There's a number of systems. The one back off the Pacific is the one that's going to come down and move south towards the Carolinas, bringing the heavier snow into the Ohio Valley as it looks right now. And if we look at precipitation here over the next 7 days, the heaviest precipitation over parts of the Ohio Valley, a little bit heavier in southeast lower Michigan. And if we look at the snowfall potential here over the next 3 days, you can see most of it combined out towards the Cascades, into the Rockies, and into southern Canada, and we should be fairly good shape here. But as we look at the next 7 days, you can see that front, or that system that'll drop down from the southeast into the Tennessee Valley is going to bring a pretty heavy swath of snow over portions of Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio into the Virginias. And again, they could be seeing some areas up to a foot of snow. So a pretty significant snowstorm is going to miss us to the south, but I think we're going to see more and more northwest systems. And this time of year, you get the cold air, some very warm air to the south, you get a pretty strong baroclinic zone, and that can really create some interesting systems. And I think as we get into the middle and end of next week, we could start to see some active systems that could dump some snow here. Not a guarantee, but the pattern is set up pretty good where we could have a return to winter here over the next couple of weeks. And then I think as we get towards the end of March, it looks like we're going to turn the corner and kick into spring in full gear as it looks right now. And if we look at the reason why we're concerned here over the next 10 days to 2 weeks, some of the air in Saskatchewan and Alberta is extremely cold, down to 50, 60 or more degrees below zero, and that's going to be the source region for the air that comes down into much of the northern plains and the Great Lakes and Midwest here over the next week to 2 weeks. So again, looks like we're going to flip back to winter, at least for a little while. And if we look at the weather watch this morning, again, wind's going to dominate the entire weather watch here, even with the blizzard, with some of the snow that's going to be lifting out into Canada. But with that very powerful winds, you're going to see a lot of blowing and drifting out in those areas. High wind warnings over portions of South Dakota. We have a large area of wind advisories across Minnesota, Wisconsin. We have high wind watches for much of southwest lower Michigan and near the eastern portions of Lake Erie, western portions of Lake Ontario. And again, with the very strong winds off to our southwest and dry conditions, a high risk for fire danger out there. Thanks for stopping by, and have yourself a great day, and 73s to all.